Hello and welcome to Who Watches the World Cup with me, Dominic Archer, and David Bryan. Hello, David. How are you today?
Hi Dom, I'm really well. I'm glad to hear your voice. It's been too long.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. This is the only podcast in the entire world, on the whole of the internet, that compares the political and footballing antics of the nations in Russia's 2018 World Cup to try and predict the winner and just analyse generally what happened. Today's episode is all about the quarterfinals. Well, not all about, but mostly about the quarterfinals. So, Dave, let's get straight into it. You could tell me what happened in the quarterfinals.
In the quarterfinals, I can't believe we've come so far already. I've got to be honest. Like we're sat here the week of the semi-finals, and
Yeah.
the final is only this Sunday, and it doesn't seem that long ago since we started this little endeavour. But
Oh, don't! You're gonna make me cry.
it's getting emotional.
Yeah.
The quarterfinals of 2018. It's been great. Should we start chronologically? Should we start with
I think that
France
seems like a
versus
good
Uruguay?
idea. Yeah.
So, France versus Uruguay. We've talked before about Uruguay. Some of their tactics haven't been all that favourable, but we've liked watching them play. I think haven't we? Especially after getting through some tough games and getting through Portugal in the round of 16. But I think what we saw in that quarterfinal was a bit like what we saw with Russia in that group, in Group A, when they finally came up against a really tough opposition. It was a bit of a wake-up call, and I think that was the same for Uruguay, even though they got through Portugal, and that's no mean feat. But Portugal perhaps are at the end of their not their reign, but this period they have of strength and very short-lived dominance, I suppose. They finally got to the final of the tournament and won Euro 2016, and they looked very strong at the beginning of this tournament. But yeah, maybe we'll talk about them a bit more later. But
I think so.
France have sort of come into their own. They've been strong. I think they might have been the only team who've won every one of their games up until the quarterfinals. Oh no, they did draw. They did draw, didn't they? They drew against Denmark in their last group game. But they've been very strong. Not lost a single game. Barely conceded any goals. Their squad was exciting to begin with, and some of their players are really now starting to show that sort of team's unity that maybe has been questioned in the France squad in the past. Under Didier Deschamps, he's not been totally loved by the French football fans or the French media. They don't really like how he sets up this team of very good attacking players, especially that front three, that youthful front three. If you discount Olivier Giroud, who has been playing more and more as the tournament's gone on, that front three that the French people love, of Griezmann, Ousmane Dembele of Barcelona, and Kylian Mbappe, they want to see those three set loose and running rampant. But Didier Deschamps plays a very organised, tactical style, which, if the French people don't like it because it's not very exciting, it is getting results, and it definitely showed that way against Uruguay. Not to concede a goal, not to really let many shots away. Uruguay managed 4 shots on target, but what I think has been a story of this quarterfinals is that some of the goalkeeping has been world class and has kept teams in the World Cup, and some other goalkeeping has sent their team out of this World Cup. Specifically, which is a hard word to say apparently. Specifically in this game where Antoine Griezmann, where France already 1-0 up, takes a shot from range, and poor Fernando Muslera flaps as the flappiest little bird might do, and flaps that goal straight into his own goal. In contrast to Hugo Lloris, who has been solid this whole tournament, and pulled off another world-class save in that first half from a Caceres header. There we see, a bit like Uruguay's chances, left flapping in the wind, like Fernando Muslera's gloves. It's trying its best. And, interesting that having scored that goal, Antoine Griezmann didn't celebrate. Initially, I thought it was because, well, why do you celebrate? Even if, it is a World Cup quarterfinal, but do you really want to celebrate when the shot wasn't that great? It's just the keeper completely fluffed it. But apparently, he went on to say that he is very enamoured with Uruguay and Uruguayan culture, and some of his very close friends at Atletico Madrid. For Uruguay, he was playing against Diego Godin and Jimenez, the Uruguayan centre halves, are his teammates at teammates at Atletico Madrid, and I think he even said he feels like he might be half Uruguayan in spirit, presumably. I know Diego Godin is actually the godfather to Griezmann's child, so they're obviously much. So maybe he didn't want to rub it in his teammates and his friends' faces. He's playing against friends; it's an emotional time, or whatever. Maybe predictably, Luis Suarez was not too taken with that. He just flat out rejected that Griezmann claimed to be half Uruguayan, and just said he's not Uruguayan, he's French, and he scored a goal, so why not just celebrate? But it's easy to say when you're a sore loser, perhaps. But nobody wants to go out at a World Cup quarter-final. But in the end, France deserved to win. They had the majority of the ball, majority of the possession. They were clinical. There were only 2 shots on target they scored from, as opposed to the 4 shots on target Uruguay had and didn't manage to score a goal. So justice done, I suppose. And then we move on. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go
straight to Brazil and Belgium, which was the next match that evening. Yeah,
let's go straight to Brazil Belgium. That was I was taken aback a little bit by it kind of seemed like bad luck was playing against Brazil a little bit in this game. As well as a bit of a balance of maybe they deserve some of it. We've talked, I think, about some of the theatrics, particularly from their biggest star, Neymar, putting a bit of a sour taste in the mouth of football fans around the world watching Brazil. Brazil are meant to be like the Samba football team, the exciting team to watch, the team everyone wants to see because of the caliber of the skillful players they have. And yet, what I remember most about Brazil this World Cup is diving, trying to win free kicks and penalties in a soft fashion and rolling around like a bit of a tool, which we saw a bit more of this today. But in terms of the bad luck, I mean, right in the beginning of this game, in the first half at 0-0, a corner comes in and Thiago Silva, who's I'm a big fan of Thiago Silva, I think he's a quality player, misses from point blank range. And if they score that early on in the game, maybe you have to assume the entire story of the first half is different, because it's not soon after that Belgium get a corner, and bad luck again goes against Brazil, and it comes off Fernandinho's shoulder and goes in for an own goal. So that's a bit of a shame. But then Belgium don't just sit back; they take that momentum and they score another. That goal from Kevin De Bruyne,
that was really spectacular. And one of the things that we've spoken about before was how De Bruyne is one of those players that's widely spoken about. And I think in a similar way to Hazard, really, where he's one of these danger players that in this World Cup seemed to basically do nothing. And didn't even seem to show up. And I was always kind of thinking, well, what is De Bruyne actually anywhere near as good as people say that he is? And then that goal was just, right, that's why he's here.
Yeah, that was absolutely class. But De Bruyne, I think, is one of those players, when he plays where he wants to play, which is a bit deeper and more of a deep playmaker role where he can ping things about. A lot of what he does, unless you're really watching him, kind of goes unnoticed, because he wants to get involved, take as many touches as he can, have a big range of passes. He'll play short passes and he'll play long passes, and he wants to try and pick holes in the defence, good through balls, which he is brilliant at. But yeah, it's as opposed to Eden Hazard, who if he's showing up and if he's on form and if he's exciting to watch, it's because he's running at people, he's nipping in around, he's doing skills, he's breezing past people with his pace and his quick feet. So he's a bit more ostentatious, I suppose, in his ability. But no doubt that De Bruyne strike was a peach. But I think because it's Kevin De Bruyne and everyone knows he's class, when he scores a goal like that, people are talking about that great goal. But what I think about is in Japan's game, that Anui goal against Belgium, I think that's an even better strike. The way he hit that, the ball doesn't even spin. I think we talked about it in the last episode. That, I think, is a purer, more perfect strike than De Bruyne's, but I think no one's going to remember it because it was a less sexy team like Japan scored it, and they end up losing the game against Belgium, so people will forget that. But people will remember that De Bruyne strike. I have no doubt. And then another key moment involving goalkeepers towards the end of the first half, a brilliant save from Courtois against one of those quintessential Philippe Coutinho shots where he comes in from the left, just jinks outside the box, but just in front of the goal, and just tries to bend one in, and Courtois reaches with those giant arms and makes a great save at a really important time right before halftime to keep Belgium up at 2-0 going into the break. And then when we get to the second half, that's when we see a bit more of this Neymar, let's say the less attractive version of Neymar on a football pitch, and that is trying to win penalties and free kicks in an unsavoury fashion. So he goes down in the box pretty softly, and I'm just thinking, that's Neymar. Like, if you really wanted to, you could probably do a couple of these defenders and score a goal, but instead you want to try and score a goal by subterfuge and conmanship, which I think goes some way to sum up his tournament. Really, I can say more about the negative side of Neymar than the positive side. I mean, he's shown glimpses of what he can do and the great side of his game as well, but it's just a shame that what we remember, because Brazil have lost now and they're gone, we'll remember Neymar for his antics as opposed to his skill and his brilliance, which is, a shame, but that's on him, and he needs to reassess his attitude a little bit, particularly with where his club football is going right now. He's obviously I think he's the highest paid footballer in the world right now at Paris Saint-Germain, and there is talk that from the outgoing PSG manager Unai Emery, who's now the new Arsenal manager for next season, there was talk that one reason he was so keen to leave is that with Neymar coming in with such a huge price tag and such massive wages, the team was being run by Neymar, not by the manager. So I think there's maybe a bit of ego involved with Neymar, and ego is important. If you're one of those attacking players, you need to have ego. You need to believe that you're better than the people you're up against in order to be at your best. But I think maybe it's gone a bit too far for Neymar, and he needs a bit of reality check, and maybe going home after just the quarterfinals is maybe the reality check that he needs, and we'll see how things go for him the rest of this summer, whether he stays at PSG or if he goes elsewhere. But another Brazil player who I think is similar in that he can turn a game on its head with his skill and in the right way, in a positive way, is Gabriel Jesus. I really like Gabriel Jesus. I think his work rate matches his ability, which is the best thing you can say about any player, I think, if they work as hard or even harder than their natural talent allows them to do things with their skill. And he does a lovely nutmeg on Vertonghen in the box. Tackle comes sliding in from Company. It looks like maybe it should just be a corner, and then all the VAR have a look at it and decide that there isn't a penalty awarded, which I think was a bit strange. I watched that replay a few times, and it's one of those annoying cliches, but you've seen them given, and it could go either way. So again, fortune not going in the favour of Brazil there. So I feel a little bit sorry for them there, especially because it didn't involve Neymar. I think if Neymar had gone down in the box and it was looked at by VAR and it was a bit on the fence, I'd be leaning against it, because you think, well, Neymar probably just went down softly. But because it's Gabriel Jesus who's got a better attitude, I kind of felt sorry for him. But this is the way things go. And it's that man Coutinho again who gets Brazil back into it. Well, not from his goal, but his cross is met by Augusto, and Brazil may be in with a chance. And they really start coming into the game. I think they get more possession, they have more shots. By the end of the match, they've had 27 shots, 9 of which are on target. But another world-class save from Courtois, from Neymar towards the end, the shot from outside the box, just goes to show, people say you can't win a World Cup with a good goalkeeper, but you can win a World Cup when you have a team that includes a great goalkeeper. Because there's instances we've just talked about with Courtois and Hugo Lloris as well. It's doing things that very few goalkeepers in the world can do, and it can completely change the texture and the pattern of a game. And they'll be very glad to have those men between the sticks, no doubt. And there we go. Then that's the first two quarterfinals over with, queuing up a very nice semi-final tie between France and Belgium, which would have got a lot of people excited.
Yeah, well, let's jump on to the second ties then. Speaking of great goalkeepers, Jordan Pickford in this match becomes the youngest England goalkeeper to keep a clean sheet in a World Cup match at 24 years old. Well, that goes to show how the match turns out. England beat Sweden 2-0. Is that what you saw coming? England and Sweden have had like a bit of a growing rivalry over the last couple of years, I feel.
Yeah.
And it always seemed like every time we went up against Sweden, we never quite anticipated them to be as strong as they were. And then this time it was kind of a walk in the park.
I certainly, I've said this to you before, and other people have talked about this. I went into watching the Sweden game thinking it's a big game, it's a quarterfinal of a World Cup, and it's England. Like, this should be edge of your seat excitement, and we should be nervous and anxious. But I went into that game not really worried. I haven't seen anything from Sweden in this tournament that I didn't think that England couldn't handle. In the very first episode, or the very first time we talked about Sweden, at least, I talked about their squad and how it wasn't as strong as it should be, and as it has been in the past. And I think for them to get as far as they did with that squad is remarkable. A bit like, I mean, if England had lost in the quarterfinal of a World Cup and went home, I think most of the English press would have been like, oh well, in quarterfinals that's not bad. I think back home for the Swedish players, I'm sure their fans and the media there will be really proud of how far they've come in this tournament, because they've had players in the past, likes of Henrik Larsson and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who can turn a game on its head. The quality that they have and the talismanic presence that they have for their squads. But this is a squad that didn't really have that. And I mentioned before about how they included Seb Larsson, who's in his mid-30s now. He's had a good career, but he can't be at his best. And I even thought that the fact that he played that first game in the groups against the weaker opposition in their group, I thought that was just to fill a gap. I didn't think he was one of their key players, but he ended up playing in all their important games and showed that he still has good quality and good stamina. I'm surprised however old he is, 34 or something, and to still go. But that just shows they don't really have any young, exciting talent in that squad that can carry them through. So as far as experience and consistency can get you, maybe is as far as Sweden could have got. So I really couldn't see England falling down against Sweden. I mean, even they haven't scored that many goals throughout this tournament, and their main goal threat is Marcus Berg, who left European football to go play in Dubai or the United Arab Emirates or somewhere, and in his own words, for the money.
Right,
and if any striker is like the leading goal scorer in their domestic league coming into a World Cup, that should give your squad a bit of a boost. But if you're the leading goal scorer in the United Arab Emirates League, why is that so hard to say? United Arab Emirates League, I don't think anyone really bats an eye. Who cares? So if he is their main goal threat, when the likes of Ibrahimovic have come before him, I don't think that's anything for, especially as strong as our defence has been this tournament. There was no worry for me there. I'll be honest. I was expecting us to win, and I expected it to be comfortable, and it turned out to be.
Yeah, I was watching the opening at least, and feeling that it was weak from England, and it is this again and again. Every match it seems to be Gareth Southgate will come out and say, "Yeah, it took us a long time to gel at the beginning of the game."
Yeah, that's fair.
And again, like, Sweden weren't exactly lacking, because Jordan Pickford got man of the match, and your goalkeeper doesn't get man of the match if he hasn't had to do anything.
Yeah, that's true. But I've just said about how strong our defense is, but yeah, you're right. They managed to have a few good chances.
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes to show, like, Jordan Pickford is part of that defense, and like, he's really, it's that Bath City experience. I've said it before. Playing against Bath City, it helps in these situations. But Jordan Pickford got man of the match. We didn't concede any. We're going through to the next round on the back of a clean sheet. That's got to be a big confidence boost. But at the same time, I don't know. I was saying this to our editor, to Steve, who edits these podcasts, the other half of my awful commentary co-host. I was saying to him that it just doesn't really feel like England are in the semi-final of the World Cup, right?
Yeah,
I think it just doesn't. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like, it's like, oh yeah, we're playing in the semi-final. And it's like, yeah, are we? It doesn't feel like this is the first time since 1990 or something ridiculous. 28 years that we've got through to the semi-final, and I'm kind of like, yeah, all right. And I don't know why that is. I'm not sure I think a big reason for it, Steve was saying that, we just haven't, England hasn't proven themselves against anybody. And also, they haven't been impressive. This isn't like watching the French team, where we're watching the French team going, oh shit. You're watching them going, like, they're good. And I don't feel that France is as good as they could be. They're still, like, making opportunities that go nowhere because they are so close, that French team, to gelling and, like, to a psychic level. To the point where, like, they're doing back heels to the exact moment there's someone behind them, and they're so close, but they're not quite there. You're like, in the next tournament, the French are just going to be possibly I'm watching them going, this looks like the best football I've ever seen, almost. But England, it's like, is it because they've had this easy run that it doesn't feel like it? Does it feel like it doesn't feel like they've earned it? Maybe. Why do you? Or is it just that we're not used to it, right? Why do you feel that I don't know, I'm asking you to justify my feeling about why it doesn't feel like England are in the semi-final. But do you think there's anything to that?
I think there is something to that. I can kind of empathise with that. And it might have something to do with the run we've been on. I think if it had been flipped and we had played Sweden in the round of 16 and then we got through Colombia in the quarterfinal, that would have maybe felt like we had earned a place in the semi-final with a bit more heart, the triumph would have felt greater, I think.
Yeah.
But because we've had the tough game first, and it seemed to go for a bit of a slump where it was easy. I don't know. I feel it's the very English sensibility of, yeah, we're doing really well, but why don't I feel more about it? Like, we were not willing to accept our success. We always have to find a way to wish it was more, wish it was greater. And it's weird, isn't it? Like, whenever we have like a British athlete is the best in his chosen sport, it's like we spend decades watching people from other countries dominate certain sports. I think about Michael Schumacher in Formula One, or the likes of Roger Federer, or going back Pete Sampras, and people in other sports there's tennis as an example. That when we finally get a British person who is the best in his chosen field, Andy Murray was world number one for a while, when they had Lewis Hamilton as F1 champion. We expect to be just the pride to be overwhelming, and we're all going to be so happy because one of our own is the best in the whole world of what he does, and we all get to watch because it's this huge spectacle. But then when it finally happens, we're let down. So maybe it's that our expectations are too high of how good it will feel, and maybe we all as much as sport is a huge part of British culture, especially if you go back and look at how well the London Olympics did, and how that spirit completely was taken on by the entire country, and that the pride of how well that was presented and organised, and it's like, yeah, we're British, this was us, we did this, even though obviously very few of us were actually involved. That I've lost my train of thought, Dom. I lost it.
I'm
so sorry.
That's all right. We're talking about national pride and what it feels to be at the height of these sporting environments, which is kind of the perfect opportunity to segue over to Russia and Croatia, because Russia are the host nation. They got to the quarterfinals for the first time in a long time, and they unfortunately they lost to Croatia on penalties. But what a showing from the Russian team, right? Like, they were the first team we spoke about in the first episode. We said how Putin himself had declared this to be the worst Russian football team of all time, right? Like, this is the weakest that they have ever been. And they got to the quarterfinals. They pushed Croatia all the way. They pushed them to extra time. They pushed them to penalties, and ultimately, they just couldn't make it. But to their credit, as I was saying, Putin at the beginning of the tournament says, Oh God, these boys! But after they lose to Croatia, he puts out a statement saying that he's proud. He's proud of the national team. That they've done more than was expected of them. He called the Russian head coach before the match to offer his support, and he called them afterwards to say that he was proud of the team. The team said that the coach said that they were disappointed to have gone out, but it seems like Russia themselves are, the Russian people are proud of how well their national team did. Now you can imagine being on tenterhooks for those going into the penalties. But then there are some comments given to journalists afterwards, where it shows that fans were crying, but then 10 minutes later they were spilling out of bars, chanting Russia in the streets and dancing and celebrating, because the fact is Russia did better than they were expected to, and Croatia, who were kind of expected to get to the quarterfinals and who rankings wise are far higher than Russia are.
Yeah, very much.
They pushed them all the way to the end. And so we've got quotes like our boys did really great. Someone else saying it was a great match. I'm really happy we got to the quarterfinals. Another person saying you can't take the trophy straight away. We're going to build on what we did here. That's really great to see, I think. And we were saying that normally we support the home nation going into a tournament, and in this one we're going, but Russia is a human rights abuser, so how much do we really support the home team? In the end, I was kind of rooting for them, I must admit, in this game against Croatia. How did you feel about it going in?
Yeah, I didn't expect them to give Croatia as much trouble as they did. But Croatia were really strong in the group, but then they struggled a little bit against Denmark as well and had to go through them on penalties. And Russia, kind of in the opposite way, took Spain all the way to penalties and then took Croatia all the way to penalties. But so they maybe have won over quite a few neutral parties, at least in the footballing sense, in this tournament. They've scored some great goals. That first goal against Croatia, Cheryshov's goal was absolutely beautiful. That lovely left foot curling shot into the top corner. But I think maybe I said this in the round of 16, but you don't expect them to go any further. No one expected them to get this far. Like you've said, they were the lowest ranked team in the whole tournament as hosts, and to get through Spain and to get out of their group, even, you have to say, how? How did they ever do this? A bit like Sweden as well, really. No one expected much from them, but they got all the way to the quarterfinals too. So it's just been this really great tournament for surprises and unpredictability. But in terms of just winning over hearts, I think they more than deserved to get as far as they did, and to even get so close, to be a penalty away from a World Cup quarterfinal. You kind of do feel sorry for them. But at the end of the day, Croatia have much more quality, and as a neutral party, you want to see the best teams go forward. And Croatia, I'm excited, even though they're up against England. I'm really excited to see them in a World Cup semi-final. I think for the first time since World Cup '98. So they're an exciting team and the kind of caliber of team you want to see in the last four.
Yeah, the only person that the Russian I feel really sorry for is Mario Fernandes, who's Brazilian-born Russian player, who gets that goal at the very end of extra time to put them through to penalties, and then he messes up his penalty. Yeah, and
scores his first ever goal for his country. In the last 5 minutes of extra time in a World Cup quarterfinal, and then blasts his penalty wide.
That's awful.
Swings and roundabouts, eh?
Yeah, I mean, just the hero he must have been for 10 minutes.
Yeah, all he had to do was put the penalty in. No one would have remembered that he was one of the guys who scored their penalties. Yeah. He would be remembered as the guy who got them to the penalty shootout.
Yeah.
So the fact that he tried to smash it, like as a defender, like I don't know why he was. Maybe he's actually been very good at penalties in training or whatnot, or he just volunteered to go because he was riding high off of that equalising goal. But yeah, you just don't do that unless you're a proven goal scorer and you've done it a million times. You don't try and smash one into the bottom corner. Just put it away. So maybe the blood rushed to his head a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a shame to see them go out, and a shame for Mario Fernandez. I'm sure that the celebrations of Russia getting to the quarterfinal will have gone on long into the night. I'm sure he didn't. You know, he probably had a little cry in the changing rooms, and then they got themselves together and celebrated getting as far as they did. Putin's not going to knock any of them off. I don't think after getting to the quarterfinals. So, yeah, good on them. But as you say, we have the semi-final. England versus Croatia. I feel nervous about this. That's all. That's all I've got to say about it, really. Okay. It's. I don't know. They've got 3 men in their starting lineup named Ivan. That's intimidating.
It's a scary name. Yeah.
3 Ivans. Jesus.
It's like Triple X. You remember Triple X? With Vin Diesel and those 2 big guys called Ivan. No, is that too vague a reference from?
It's like that, but with one more. Triple Ivan. That's what the next one's called.
That's the sequel should be called. Yeah, just about. Well,
right. We better get on to Facebook and Twitter quick before the match kicks off. But this seems like the perfect time to segue to our next segment, Dave.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this.
So, Dave, 2008 was a pretty serious year. I don't know how much of it you remember. It was the year before we went to university, before we met, before we became the best friends that we are now. And it was also the year that the world's economy turned to utter garbage. It was just the worst economic crisis in living memory in almost 100 years. And really, there were 4 countries within Europe that were hit the hardest by this, that came to be referred to as the pigs. We had the Portuguese, the Italians, the Greeks, and the Spanish. Really, they were letting the whole team down. But
disappointing.
10 years on, they were a little bit. But 10 years on, the effects of this crisis are still being felt, especially within Greece, where it is just crisis after crisis. But in one of these countries, the daily newspaper Publico said, "All this good news is starting to make me feel ill. We weren't built to handle so much happiness." 10 years on, Portugal has staged the world's most miraculous recovery, and I think it's only fair we actually get a Portuguese person in to tell us just how this has happened. Who have you roped in to discuss this with us?
Well, obviously I wanted to get the most qualified person to talk about such a thing as I possibly could. So I started at the top. But I'm afraid no members of government would take my calls. So instead, I went through my Rolodex and found the one vaguely Portuguese-sounding name that I could find, and that is who I've badgered mercilessly until he agreed to Skype with us and talk to us today, and that is our good friend from university, Luis Enrique. How are you, Luis?
Hello, thank you for having me. It's me. I'm a professional. I'm an expert in the soccer.
In the soccer, yeah, you said it right. Well done.
In the soccer. I'm a bit offended that I wasn't on the top of the list. I wasn't the first person.
Well, to be fair, I've not spoken to you in about 6 months, so you can forgive me for forgetting that you ever existed.
Well, I haven't spoken to you in about 6 years, so really, this is pretty remarkable.
It's a reunion.
It is,
yeah.
But I mean, when we were at uni, we would have big discussions about how terrible everything was in Europe, especially in Portugal. And you were saying, I don't even think I want to go back to Portugal. Like, there's no jobs, there's nothing going on. And then now, 10 years later, not only has everything at least started to turn around, but you won Euro 2016. And last year, you won the Eurovision Song Contest.
Oh, yeah! That guy was brilliant. I loved him. He was great.
Man, it was 2 big years for us.
Back-to-back victories.
I think we won something else. I don't remember what.
The hearts and minds of the Portuguese people, I think, is what's being won over here.
Yeah. We didn't win the Confederate whatever thing.
No, the Confederations Cup. No.
What is it called? Yeah, that was
Brazil
a bit depressing.
Because they win everything.
For sure. Yeah. foreshadowing our our participation in this.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, at least in a footballing sense,
World Cup.
It wasn't a great precursor.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the World Cup then. So since it's just happened, at the beginning of the World Cup in our first episode about Portugal and Spain before that 3-3 draw,
yeah.
I was pretty open in my disdain for Cristiano Ronaldo, and he went a fair way to proving it, and I had to take some of what I said back. But what is the feeling within Portugal for how they did this time around? Are you happy with how it went, or are you a little bit heartbroken?
I don't know. It's really weird because we conned our way to the end in the Euro 2016, right? We didn't really deserve it, but we somehow won, and there was this constant hope, and we were like the TVs and channels were all building it up like this could happen. Everyone believes in this miracle now because somehow we won in 2016. Like we could con our way to the finals again, but then it didn't happen. Obviously, we lost. But there was this just kind of resignation, and I found it a bit weird because we wouldn't shut up about that incredible goal against Spain in the first match we had, where Cristiano, I don't know how you call it. It's not a penalty, but it's
a free kick.
Sorry? Yeah, a free kick, exactly. So every time you'd turn the TV on, you'd see that goal a million times, and the newspapers were all about that goal. Look, we're in good shape. We didn't win against Spain, but it was good enough. And then we kind of saw Portugal being shit again against Morocco and Iran, kind of like uninteresting matches completely. And so our game against Uruguay was like, oh, I guess we tried, we really tried, but our team isn't strong enough, clearly. We had a million opportunities. So when we lost, it was kind of, and I even saw that in Cristiano Ronaldo, just the way he spoke about the game afterwards. It was like a weird resignation. Like clearly we didn't have it. We tried, and that it's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. Yeah, we lost. Whatever.
No, I mean, yeah, but that was it. We weren't too depressed about it. I found that really weird. The only thing that depresses me is that the newspapers, and not only in Portugal but around the world as well, marked this as the end of an era, not only for Cristiano but also Messi, right? Because at least for Cristiano, this could have been the last World Cup he ever, took part in. And that feels weird. It's kind of depressing. That's I
wouldn't put it past Ronaldo to come back for the next one. Like considering that he's like 33 now, right? And he's still one of the two best players in the world, and he's like in the most peak of physical condition that any footballer has ever been in. Like we expect the average age of a footballer to play up until there's like mid-30s, 35 or whatever, maybe even less if they get some injuries. But Ronaldo being like an alien from outer space, I wouldn't be surprised if in 4 years he's still playing for Portugal. Maybe he won't be their star. Maybe he'll play a bit part, but I think he might go. It depends what happens, I suppose, in the next 4 years. And
considering that he just had the second highest transfer fee of all time, right? He's just moved to Juventus. They've just signed the deal to leave Real Madrid for Juventus. And it's second only to Neymar for the most expensive player of all time at 33. Right? That's really weird. Insane. You don't spend that much money on him if you're not expecting to play him for 3 years, 4 years. So clearly Juventus thinks that he's a worthy investment for that. But speaking of Ronaldo, I tend to make my feelings about the tax cheat, the criminal, fairly clear. But is he still a shining beacon for Portugal? Is he generally well regarded, or is he seen as a bit of a disappointment, or is everyone still loves him?
No, man. There's no disappointment. He's a national hero constantly. There's no way of changing that. Like, there's no way we can't be, like, the whole country can't be proud of him, even if he's a douche or a criminal or whatever. like, it's the only reason we did well these. Well, maybe not the only reason, because in 2016 it seems like the defense was doing a good job, but like, he's the main reason we keep going, far. I think that's what kind of is scary about the fact that he might not play the next one or whatever, because there's the feeling that you don't really know when the next good Portugal team is gonna be here, because we rely on him so much and everybody loves him. So
yeah, and they rely quite a lot on their older players generally. I mean, all that defense, who, you're right, did really well in Euro 2016. They're all now in their mid-30s. They've all got to be in the later parts of their careers, and there isn't a great amount of like sexy young players coming in and like giving at least a bit of hope for the future.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm also not really informed about the new guys who are coming, but it doesn't feel like we're always using the old guys, and that's a bit of a problem sometimes.
Yeah.
But so who knows what the I hope it's not like 60 years of doing nothing, like not even getting into the World Cup,
You'll be like England. It'll be like England after World Cup 1966, sorry. We come close once or twice every 20 years, but then every tournament is just disappointing.
Yeah.
Until now. So you've got to wait about 50 years, I think. That's your penance.
What I'm more worried about is just not being, qualified. That's it. Like before 2000, we weren't in the 98, and I don't think we were in the years before that. So that would be a weird position to be in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so it's kind of strange that people are talking about the end of an era when they've only been among the top international teams, like you say, for like 20 years, and then they go and win Euro 16, and then 2 years later they disappoint everyone. Everyone's like, well, this great era of Portuguese football is over. It's like, what? I mean, it's been 20 years of just being there, and then they won one thing. Yeah. It's not like an era ever even existed in the first place. It's just they had, like you say, this kind of miracle.
Yeah.
And Euro 16.
I mean, yeah. I don't think everybody's that disappointed about our performance in the World Cup. But yeah, there's that feeling constantly.
Well, miracle seems to be a word that's being thrown around a lot about Portugal at the moment, from what I've been able to tell. Because, again, when we used to speak about Portugal, it was always in doom and gloom kind of terms. But now, over the last 3 or 4 years, it seems like the whole country is kind of going through some kind of rejuvenation.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go on. You know more about this than I do. But it seems like Antonio Costa took the Portuguese parliament from the far right parties. And what's kind of interesting about Portugal in comparison to the rest of Europe is that in the rest of Europe we've seen how immigration and this migrant crisis, in as many fucking averted commas as you can get, has led to like kind of the rise of a far right across, because we had Brexit, and then Le Pen in France came close, and Germany's been suffering from that. But Portugal has gone completely the other direction, right? While Europe seems to be going further and further towards the right, Portugal has embraced its centre-left, the centre-left coalition with like the further left, with the Portuguese Communist Party, and it seems to actually be working. Like, is that something that is actually felt within Portugal, where the rest of Europe is kind of going further towards hate, but Portugal is actually improving?
That's a good point. I don't really know. I do see, that phenomenon happening everywhere in Europe, but somehow we're not going in that direction. We're going in other bad directions, but not the far right one, fortunately. For us, it's always been, and I think it's going to be for the next years. I don't think we'll have like a far right political party gaining strength. We're always about the right and the left. Is that how you say it in English? Esquerda e direita. So it's the Socialist Party and PSD, which are always fighting for the power in the government. We have the PCP, which are like, which is the Communist Party, but it's mainly old people.
Yeah.
And the political party doesn't really have hopes of ever winning anything, like anything, because.
Yeah, that's what I seem to see. Like looking at the local elections last year, like Costa's the Costa's Socialist Party wins almost everything, and then he's in an alliance with the PCP, but the PCP are kind of in that situation, as you're saying, where nobody's really voting for them anymore because the less extreme party seems to be doing better than expected. And so the PCP kind of has to, hold back on their alliance a little bit. Like this left-leaning coalition seems to exist because nobody wants the right back in. So they're willing to make concessions. Like, yeah, we don't quite need the extreme stuff or as extreme because nobody wants, the right to take power again. But at least from what I'm reading, the PCP is like, okay, how do we make ourselves relevant? How are we going to maintain votes when the less radical Socialist Party seems to be doing pretty well?
Well, the PCP, I think it might be the same in other countries. I'm not sure, but it's a weird political party because they're on the left side, right? They're left wing, but they're really conservative in certain aspects, like. So people, like young people, don't really go for their views because I don't know, like a few weeks ago there's this big talk about touradas, the bullfighting stuff. There was a proposal to ban it because it's part of our tradition, but it sucks because we're killing bulls. And like the left wing, like in general, are against it, but then like PCP is one of those that is always on the side of the right wing in those elements, right. And like
so they're kind of economically left wing.
Yeah. They're very very conservative in certain aspects. Really weird, and. And then we have PNR, which is the far right political party, but which, they have no power at all and they're really small. So I don't think they'll be a threat anytime soon. But yeah, PCP, I don't know. They're weird.
Can you offer any kind of suggestion for why it is that Portugal has managed to avoid that? I don't know if it's just because when we've had this increase in migration throughout Europe, Portugal is as far as away from all of that migration as you can be and still be in Europe, right? It's the westernmost country other than Ireland. So is it just that migrants aren't making it to Portugal and so there isn't a crisis about immigration, or is there just something about being Portuguese, or is it even winning the Euro 2016 and winning Eurovision that just, there isn't a crisis of what it means to be Portuguese the same way there's
a few, bad reactions. Well, we received some migrants like a few years ago. I don't know, a few thousands, not that many. But there's these stories of a lot of them, going away, like going to Germany or other richer countries because the conditions aren't great here anyway. And because a lot of the families get separated or go different ways, so they'd rather go meet, go to bigger communities instead of staying here in Portugal. That's the stories I've heard. So we don't really have that problem, but I think in general we're pretty open to receiving them. It's just that we don't really have the country for it. So yeah, it hasn't been an issue really. And I think another reason maybe we're not that open, but is because we had we've talked about this before. We had the dictatorship. It was like a extreme right wing dictatorship until '74. That's when we had the revolution. Then we became a free country finally. So I think it's too close to this time to nowadays for us to be interested in those views and ways again. Ever since that happened, we've very much been a socialist, leaning country.
Yeah, that's interesting because looking at a country like Brazil, which, I mean, it's the only other major country, well, other than Macau, I guess, the big Portuguese colony, but Brazil was in a similar situation where it only came out of its dictatorship, around the same era. But Brazil seems to have this almost desire for the old days, right? And I think there is a similar thing in Spain, where it's like, yeah, but things weren't that bad under the far right, right? Like, especially after, after 2008, after the economic crisis, where now finally, like, the budget deficit in Portugal was the lowest since democracy was restored in 74. Like, the economy now is as good as it was under a dictatorship, which is kind of amazing. But like, there's no nostalgia among the older generations of going, yeah, but Portugal was just so much stronger back when we didn't have democracy. There isn't any.
Yeah, it's really cringe, but you sometimes hear those comments like, oh, back then you'd have more like there was not so much unemployment, or immigration wasn't a problem, or whatever. I don't know. There is that nostalgia sometimes, but I think it's a minority. I don't think we're, in general... I mean, we had this thing like 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, maybe I'm exaggerating. I don't know how time works. We had this stupid show, which was called the I don't know, the best Portuguese guy. How do you translate this? Like...
Oh, like the best Portuguese guy in history.
Yeah, I think you've had that probably in England, right?
Like,
Who was the best?
Yeah, we had one. Ours was Winston Churchill won. I think Princess Diana came second. Then it was David Beckham. So that's from my memory. Off the top of my head.
The guy who won that was Salazar, the dictator, the right-wing dictator, which is really weird. Like a guy everybody hates, but like that guy won that thing, so that means something. Some guys were voting for that guy in that show, and the guy who was second was the creator of the Communist Party here. Two completely different, guys.
Where was Ronaldo on this list?
Was Ronaldo? I don't think Ronaldo was a thing then. This was like...
this
was like 15, 14 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Right. If it had been in 2016, I think you know who would have been at the top of that list.
Maybe you're
but
right.
that is a kind of scary, a scary thing. This is what I'm always saying about democracy: how it is just a ridiculous idea, because you give people the chance to vote for who they think is the best person ever, and they choose the last person they should be putting at the top.
It was explained by some experts that like the people who would vote for footballers or writers or poets didn't vote because it was a crappy show thing, a TV thing, and the guys who saw the opportunity to vote for Salazar did. So I think that also explains why a guy like that would win, because if everybody voted in Portugal, I don't think that would be the case. But still, the feelings are there. I think there's some guys that are nostalgic for that era, which was terrible, and people were tortured, and literature was censored, and films weren't shown, and stuff like that, because they controlled everything. So it wasn't a good era, definitely.
And they were not winning the Eurovision Song Contest.
That's what
back in those days
does to a country. I don't.
But
But if you go back a little bit further,
you've
got in terms of football, there's the great days of Eusebio. Like, he was arguably the best player in the world in like the 50s and 60s.
Eusebio,
he was maybe a child of immigrants or an immigrant himself. And what was in that kind of under that far right dictatorship? What was the sort of race situation? Was Portugal a very diverse country, or was it a bit more segregated?
To be honest, I'm not the best guy to talk about that, but we always had, throughout the dictatorship, we had the problems with the colonies, which was not problems, but like we wanted to be to free them, right? And that happened very late. We had wars in many other countries, and so we always had a weird relationship with race because we were that empire. The Portuguese Empire was a thing until those years, but because of that, I think we always had a country that was quite diverse, and it's always that hypocrisy, right? The thing where you have this racist governments or values and stuff, like, keep things apart, but then you have these big stars like Eusebio and you applaud them, and it's like there's quite a lot of racism and segregation here in Portugal. Not segregation like in the real sense of the term, but black people are put in the suburbs and stuff like that. That is a thing in Portugal.
Yeah.
And then we applaud guys that go in our national team and win it for us. Like Eder is a national hero just because of that crappy goal.
Yeah, that one goal, and then he did nothing.
And I see some black people, actors and stuff, mentioning that on Facebook and social media, like, oh, we are a racist country, there's always racism, but then when it comes to these moments, you're applauding these guys who play for us. Like, there's one of those worst things here, like in terms of racism in Portugal, is against what do you call them in English? Gypsies? Is that the word?
Gypsies.
It's a really weird thing. Like, racism against black people is viewed as not acceptable, right? In general, you shouldn't be racist. But when it comes to gypsies, you can say you hate gypsy people because that's acceptable. They're so far below the social norm that it's accepted. But that's not cool, right? I'm saying that shouldn't be. That it's so weird and strange that
strange.
I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm not racist," but you know how gypsies are. They steal and shit. I'm so fucking astounded. Like every time I hear that, and yet we have this gypsy guy. This name Quaresma.
Quaresma,
he's one of the biggest stars we have, and he plays well, and he scored some goals, and he sometimes mentions this. Oh, this gypsy guy saved you and stuff like that.
Really? I was curious if there were any representatives of that culture in your national team. So Quaresma, that makes sense.
Did you know he was gypsy?
No, I didn't know, but it kind of.
So I always hate that. Oh yeah, we hate gypsies, but when there's this guy who plays well, we're glad he's here. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like in America in the civil rights era when Muhammad Ali was still the most famous, most popular fighter in America, and throughout the 60s, the best basketball players in America were all black guys, and you'd go along and see your team and cheer them on because they're great athletes, but then they still have to sit at the back of the public buses, and they still have to go to their own clubs and start to drink out of their own segregated water fountains, and it's all
it's even before the 60s. You're looking at Jesse Owens in the 30s.
That's right.
Yeah, in the
Berlin,
Olympics in Germany,
Yeah.
and Jesse Owens shows up Hitler, and Hitler like has that whole thing with the gold medal, and America's like, yeah, we showed those racists. Now come back and use the other water fountain.
Yeah.
And and then, but that's still going on, right? It's almost 100 years later, and you're going, what are you doing, kneeling on the pitch?
Yeah.
Stand up for the anthem, And I think there is something about sport and race. The whole point of this podcast was to to bring the politics and sports together, because they're not talked about as often as they should do. But I think what you're saying is right, Luis, and it's not just constrained to Portugal, but every country in the world seems to have this hypocrisy. And in the UK, I think Raheem Sterling, and going into this World Cup, is probably the biggest example of that, where the papers have chastised him for not being a good role model, and then targeted him because his name is Raheem. And it's like, guys, come on. Like, you hear the phrase, it's 2018, and last year, but it's 2017 or it's 2016. Well, we've been saying that for 20 years, right? We were saying, come on, it's the year 2000 now. And, and it doesn't seem to matter what year it is. These issues are still going on, but God, I hope we're making some progress. Otherwise, it's going to start getting really depressing. So to get away from that as soon as possible, Dave, is there anything else regarding Portugal's attempts in this World Cup that you wanted to discuss?
I think we talked about it a lot in the early days, and that in the same way that Argentina relies on Messi, and we didn't really mention it, but Colombia kind of really relied on James Rodriguez when he was fit, and in that last group game before the last 16, he was the guy who really turned Colombia on and really ran the game. And when he was firing, Colombia were firing. And even though they have Falcao, who's like their talisman, it's actually Rodriguez who makes things happen. And it happened where he wasn't fit to face England. It really showed that Colombia, without any flair, without any creativity, they had to resort to that sort of aggressive, underhanded way of trying to stop England. And with Portugal, it very much seems the same way. It's just like it's all about what Ronaldo can do. And if you looking at their lineups, they have some interesting creative players. Like Bernardo Silva from Manchester City is he's supposed to be like a world-class creative player, but I didn't really see much from him. And that foundation that they did build on, where it's like, okay, we've got really good defenders, most of whom are quite old now. I mean, Jose Font left England to go play in China or somewhere, and Pepe, who did score the goal against Uruguay, but then ended up being at fault for the second goal, and he's in his third. I think he became Portugal's oldest ever World Cup goal scorer at about 35 years old.
Pepe's 35? What the hell? Man, he's old.
Yeah. He's been around forever. Like he was in Championship Manager 2008, Dom. I remember it so he's been around a long time. But
good old days.
Yeah, I think it's always been for most of this 20-year spell. I think Ronaldo probably made his bow for the international stage quite young, because he burst onto the stage at Lisbon when he was about 17. This famous story of when Manchester United played against Lisbon in a pre-season friendly, and Sir Alex Ferguson was so impressed by this 17-year-old kid who was ripping the shit out of United that he signed him up for a laughable amount of money. And then obviously goes on to be the biggest, most expensive player in the world, or second most expensive player in the world now. Excuse me. So, I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. I've done this twice today. That's so annoying. What was I talking about?
You're really letting the team down.
I'm letting the team down. Oh, yeah, so that they have... Yeah. So
you know what?
They have that foundation of the defence and Ronaldo, and let's just fill in all the gaps that are missing there and try and do something. And as much as Ronaldo did like that free kick you talked about, which was astounding, it was world class. Like the commentary on English TV was one of those moments that's going to be every time that free kick will be replayed, that commentary will be with it, going, "He's only gone and done it. Oh my God, he's only gone and done it." Like it was world class, but then that was like I think he'd had like 45 or 46 attempts at free kicks in international competitive games before that, and not scored any of them. And he scores one, which granted not many people can do. And he's he's like the best player in the world, and then he's had a few more opportunities since then. He missed all those ones.
He even missed a penalty, right?
Yeah, I think so. Who did
that
miss
sucked.
penalty against? I can't remember.
I think.
Yeah. Imagine. Yeah, if you have like when Messi missed a penalty for Argentina, it's like you get a penalty, this great opportunity to get a goal in a high stakes tournament, and you go, if there's one guy we want to take this, it's Cristiano Ronaldo, it's Lionel Messi. And when they miss, imagine how deflated you must be as a team when your hero, your leader,
that was
can't do something that presumably he's been doing
it is
thousands of times. Yeah, but how strange it must be for not just the team to be so deflated by that, but I bet the whole country probably was like, after Ronaldo, the god that he is, can't score a penalty, then that must take a lot of the stuffing out of you as a fan. Poor guy. And poor guy. I mean, what's he going to do with those hundreds of thousands of pounds a week? What is he on? It's a sign of 500,000, something like £500,000 or euros a week contract for like 3 or 4 years.
He deserves it.
Well, I think with that amount. With that amount of money, he can get a new head at that airport, can't he? Because
fix that statue.
Man, he's already done it.
Fix that statue.
Of
course he did. Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, so. But what happened to the old one? Because
it's weird because now people are pissed off because the other one is too good. They like.
Yeah, of course you've got to love the old one.
Yeah, it had to stay. But I don't know if there was an explanation for it. But when it was swapped, there was a little bit of a mystery. Like who the hell swapped this? And because the airport wasn't notified and stuff like that. And just some guy made a new statue. I don't know if there was any development on that story, but anyway.
I'm sure Ronaldo, like on the slide, just paid some world-class sculptor. Like, just can you do something about this?
Do you think he paid for it? I don't think he paid for it.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, it had to be the airport, right? Or who?
I don't know. What kind of publicity does that give to your
I
airport?
Don't know. Or the island, or I don't know, the government.
Yeah, like I would imagine, maybe just because I'm very cynical, but I would imagine more people would want to go to Miradira to see the shit statue than would want to go and see the good
I saw it. It was amazing.
Definitely, I want to see the old one.
You went to see it?
I mean, I didn't. I went to see a friend. Then I saw the statue of it. Obviously, I went to the museum.
There's a Ronaldo museum.
Yeah. Quite small, but there's all the golden balls. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, but it sounds funny when you say it.
And golden shoes. I don't know what they're called.
Boots, exactly.
Yeah, I saw it. It's good. Good museum.
But, so you're not a guy. You're not a guy, Luis, who's obsessed with football. You're not really a football guy. So, what does someone like Ronaldo do to the way you absorb football when it's something you wouldn't really pay attention to if it wasn't for the fact that your country has one of the 2 greatest players of all time?
I don't think it's because of Cristiano. It's just, for me, it's the World Cup and Euro as an event, and the fact that Portugal is there, because I've always liked watching Portugal play. I think that's the only thing. I mean, there's added value because Cristiano is there, and I like to watch him play, and he makes our matches more interesting, but it's not really about him, I think, for me. It's more, there's something about the events themselves. And because I still like to watch the rest of the games. Like, I'll probably watch England play today and stuff like that. But I don't care for the clubs. That's my thing. I can't have this stress in my life every fucking year. I don't understand how you guys do it. Like,
no,
my heart
with
can
you
take
on that.
it.
I'm with you on that.
Like, if I was a Benfica fan or Sporting, man, it's an endless loop. It just goes, you're a champion, and then 2 months later, you're already working for the next one. It never ends.
That's pretty much how it goes.
It's crazy.
Try being a West Ham fan, it's stressful.
But, but then there's the other side. They're like, oh, we lost this World Cup. Now I have to wait 4 years. I'll be dead by then. Until I see.
Hey, you've only got to wait 2 more years for the next Euros, and you're the reigning champions of the Euros. So who knows what could happen?
Well, and frankly, you only have to wait until Or is Eurovision, was that already hosted in Portugal this year?
It's already happened, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, but the Portuguese guy, what's the name of the guy who won 2017, Luis? Do you know?
So what do you mean?
The guy who won Eurovision last year.
Salvador Sobral, the Portuguese guy? Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. So I watched the Eurovision this year, 2018, just waiting for him to do, the winner always comes back and performs the following year. So all the acts this year were shit. I mean, they're all supposed to be shit, really, aren't they? But watching the 17 one, and then this guy Salvador comes on for Portugal, and this is an objectively good song. It's got folky elements, and he's got an incredible voice, and it's not some pop bollocks that the rest of it is. So that kind of blew me away, and it made me... It's kind of one of these amazing moments where you sit down thinking, this is all... Maybe it's the same if you don't really like football, and you sit down to watch football, and you're like, well, I'm not going to enjoy this, but maybe I can take the mick out of the rolling around pansies, or if they've got stupid haircuts or something. But then you see something that actually takes your breath away. Yeah. It can really just sort of surprise you and reinvigorate your appreciation for things. And I think that did that for me for Eurovision last year. At least just with music, just to know that in something that is completely like a pool of what's supposed to be vapid and mass-produced, flavorless music, someone like that could even get selected to be in the competition in the first place. And then when he performed, I was like, he's too good. There's no way that he can win. Sorry, I'm going on a diatribe now about Eurovision.
I was going to say, this World Cup football and international politics podcast has taken a real turn.
I think Eurovision and politics have got a lot of common ground there. So I don't think I'm straying too far.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's next year's podcast.
Yeah, there's no football, so we got to talk about Eurovision.
Yeah.
I mean... Just talk about that again. It was just a weird couple of years for Portugal, because I don't think our country is used to winning anything. We're a very pessimistic country. I think England has some of that too, right? We're like, oh man, we suck at everything. We're poor. Our Eurovision songs usually are terrible, and then all of a sudden we win the Euro, and then the Eurovision, and we're like, man, what the hell? What is this feeling? And there was still some of that for the Confederate Cup thing, and then for this, and obviously it doesn't last forever. But yeah, it was a couple of weird years for us in terms of positivism that wasn't there before, and hope.
Do you think that feeling of hope will continue within the country going forward, even if it's not sporting events, even if it's not the wondrous feeling of winning Eurovision? Is it something that's a new hope within Portugal?
I think so. It definitely brought some new feelings. We're like, okay, we can make this happen in certain areas of our country. But with the success and tourism flourishing in Portugal and stuff like that, there's bad things that come. I live in this Lisbon bubble, obviously, but in Lisbon, we have this thing going on that has happened in London too, where the Lisboetas, people from Lisbon, are forced out of the capital because it's getting very, very touristy and very, very expensive to live here. Yeah. Apartments are very expensive. People are getting thrown out of their apartments for Airbnbs and stuff like that. So young people are forced to live in the outskirts. So it's a weird thing. When a city becomes popular, all these bad things also happen. And
double-edged sword. Totally.
So that has been a constant, this last year and two years. And I'm guessing it's the same in Porto. It's the main city in the north. Rents have been going up. And that's a weird thing too. Not very fair for the people who've been here for forever. But
yeah.
So with success in Euro, you get bad moments too. Like in the World Cup this year. You can't win every time.
Yeah, if ever truer words were spoken.
Well, that seems like a perfectly depressing place
Back to my
end,
Portuguese spirit.
I think. We had that moment talking about the hope of Portugal going forward, and then ended with.
No, but with that flourishing tourism, there's also a lot of events. Like we have Eurovision here as well. We have the Web Summit. We have all these big events now coming here to Lisbon. It's weird. So that's hopeful. I still think that's kind of good that people are interested in our country. But yeah, there's always a downside.
Well, I hope that Portugal can maintain that balance, and that you can not fall into the same pits of despair that the rest of Europe and especially Britain has done. Dave, do you have any final words?
I hope you don't get kicked out of your apartment for an Airbnb, Luis. That'd be really sad.
It'd be very weird because my mother owns this apartment. If she does that to me, man, knife in the back.
That doesn't mean you're safe, man. That doesn't mean you're safe.
Yeah, we never know.
Thank you to Luis Enrique for joining us there to discuss Portuguese football, Portuguese politics, and that bastard Ronaldo. And thank you for lending us your ears once again in this discussion on the quarterfinals. Next up, we have the heights of the semi-final. Dave, I'm nervous for England going into this. Do you actually want them to win? Will you be able to stand the tension of the final if England do win, or will you just have a heart attack?
I think I might just die.
I'm thinking the same thing.
Honestly, though, I think it's a win-win situation for England. Like, if England go out in the semi-final of a World Cup after all those years of hurt, I don't think anyone will be disappointed. I mean, people will be a little bit disappointed because this is a team that could go all the way to the final, maybe even win it, but they've done better than was ever expected of them, so the boys are heroes no matter what happens, I think.
I agree. So thank you for listening, and we will see you after the semi-finals, if we're still alive.
Anarchy in the UK!